Okay, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Stars, really. So it's an honour to present Vladimir Sidivy, who you probably all know. He's been in the salt industry for 60 years or something. It's just very long time. It's about 100 years, actually, yeah. But you will know him best as in 2004 he established Salt Partners. He's helped a lot of people in this room and more people around the world to establish high quality pure salt production from a variety of different...
There was a request to increase the volume because it's hard to apparently hear.
Oh, sorry, okay.
If you want me to repeat the whole presentation?
No. Okay, so I'll just let Dr. Sidivy take it away. Thanks very much.
Mrs. Chairwoman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about my views about the salt industry developments in Europe and worldwide. Just to remind you that salt is one of the basic commodities. What is the size of the total production and consumption? Altogether about 300 million tons per annum. And the consumption is mainly in the chemical industry. This is also where I have most of the experience because I worked for 20 years for Krebs Swiss, who are the pioneers of the chemical industry of the caustic and chlorine production, electrolysis. That company has, as Krebs Swiss does not exist anymore, it has been procured by some other companies. Krebs Swiss also developed some salt technologies to be incorporated in caustic chlorine plants to improve the salt quality prior to dissolution in electrochemical brine, and that's my main area of expertise, knowledge and experience. Now, the world trade, we have seen already one chart. On this one, it is made visible that the main world trade is actually located in only three, production for exports and for trade is located in three main centers. Certainly Australia is the center number one, Mexico is the center number two, and Chile is the center number three. There are many interesting smaller developments that add and that help to keep the balance of salt production and consumption. One of them is certainly India, with a remarkable increase of production and exports in the past few years, and that's the one that I would like to also mention in more detail. There is a substantial amount of salt crossing border between Canada and United States, and as you can see here, sorry, pressing the wrong button. As you can see here, the European cross-border trade with salt is very limited. It takes place between Germany, Holland and Belgium. And also, as you can see here, the exports and imports from Europe are insignificant. That means the European salt market is isolated. It develops, it takes its own development, own pace of working. Now, because Australia is the main export producing country, and all of the salt produced there is solar salt, we have made a trip in Australia, my family and me, with some friends and experts in the Australian salt production, have hired a plane and flew over all of these Australian solar salt works. Now, my daughter Isabella was taking the pictures, and my wife Erika has also contributed with her advertising and video production campaign. We have flown first over Shark Bay, and we have seen that the salt production is going very well there. However, the stock of salt was only about half full. 6 years later, nothing much has changed. In Lake MacLeod, a huge stockpile, 1.5 million tons capacity, was almost empty, only about 12% full. And 6-7 years later, the situation has not significantly changed. The stockpile in Onslow, that is the ACTSO 2.5 million tons salt plant that was built in the 90s and now sold to Mitsui. The stockpile was empty. Capacity 500,000 tons. What happened right on that day was that the dikes have broken through, and the brine from the pond number 1, containing about half of the inventory of brine, has flown out back to the sea. In 2016, we can see that the salt production in Onslow has recovered, and the stockpile is about 25% full. Dampier had a stockpile, the original stockpile of 2 million tons for salt production capacity of about 4 million tons, was eliminated. A new purification plant, new wash plant was built, and new stockpiles were established, and this stockpile was about 1/3 full. 6 years later, the stockpile is almost empty. You can see two heaps of salt, this one, and a minute one here, and the whole rest of the stockpile is empty. This is the stockpile for delivery of the salt, is about half full. And the situation 6 years later has not changed. This is the Port Hedland stockpile, about 60% full, and about the same or even less, 40% full 6 years later. Now, these are the stockpiling capacities of the major salt producers in Australia. Capacity is about 6 to 7 million tons. And the situation is that only about 1.3 million tons of salt is there on the stockpile. 20% of the stockpiling capacity has been utilized. If you compare it, if you take a look at how the capacity was designed, you can see that for 14.5 million theoretical maximum production capacity, about half of that, about 6 to 7 million tons is the capacity for the stock. And there are good reasons for it. First of all, the salt needs to stay on the stock for some time to dry and to drain off the magnesium. And also there is a necessity to have enough salt on stock in the case of the calamities such as we have just seen in Onslow. Now, if this is the production capacity, if this is the production capacity and this is on the stock, then it represents 9%. 9% on the stock instead of let's say at least 25 or 30%. Now, the conclusion from that is that there is a shortage of salt. If the people don't have salt on stock, they have sold it, and there is a shortage. The shortage is persistent. This Australian salt quality is one of the best in the world, 99.7 minimum and 99.8 standard delivered purity of the salt, mainly for the chloralkali industry. That's what the chloralkali industry requires, needs, operates the membranes as well, and there is a shortage of this salt. Now, when we take a look at the world production, again, these figures are from Roskill. We can see that in Asia over the past 10 years, the average growth rate was 2%, 2.2%. Total increase 21% in 10 years. In Europe, there is a contraction, 13% less salt production after 10 years. A rate of contraction is 1.5% per annum. The North American situation is rather stable. There is a small growth. Latin America growth has increased by 50% over 10 years. A growth rate in production is 4.6%. Oceania, that means that's Australia. There is a good growth rate, 20% more, 1.9% per annum. And Africa has the highest increase, doubled, and growth rate of 12.5%. However, the production is relatively small for such a huge population, 6 million tons. That's 5% of the world production, is a small production capacity. Here it is shown as a graph. We can see the relatively smooth, relatively straight line production figures worldwide. We can see the Asia growth most pronounced, and we can see the decline in Europe. Here, this is the second largest salt producer in the world, and North American situation rather steady. when we take a look at the distribution of insolation, insolation is the amount of solar energy that actually passes through the atmosphere, through the clouds, and reaches the Earth. We can see that the highest insolation is in the area, now this is Africa, I think this is not a very good picture. Here is Africa, here is South America, here is Australia, and we can see that the highest insolation is in Sahara, in the Middle East, and in North India. And this is where the climatic conditions for solar salt production are the best. We have seen that the growth rate in Asia Pacific, the imports are growing steadily. At the same time, 2.2% was the production, 3.3% is the growth rate in the trade. That means the development is not only local, but it's a development of production for somebody else, for some other country. And we can see that this has been achieved, that the largest importers of salt actually is China, reaching 7 to 8 million tons in 2013 and 14, and there is a steady growth of requirement in the other countries such as South Korea, Taiwan, and Indonesia. The exports, we can see that the overall exports have gone up, that Australia is at the limit of its production capacity, consistent with the shortage of salt on the stock that I have mentioned. And we can see that Chile has picked up greatly, that Mexico is constant, and that India has shown a very pronounced increase in the exports. Salt import prices, they have gone down commensurate with the increase of the production capacity. These are delivered prices. They also are commensurate with the reduction of the transport cost. Now, in India, there is a development that has taken place, and that is quite remarkable. And it has mainly taken place in Gujarat. This is a Google picture of the salt works that have been established on the Pakistani border. This is the Hajipir project of Archean Chemicals. These are salt crystallizers, and the other crystallizers, they are used to produce SOP, sulfate of potash, as a fertilizer. Similar production is taking place in the United States, in the Great Salt Lake, by Compass Minerals. The other operation, the older operation of Archean, is the Jackal salt, and here is the export terminal. It's a small terminal with small production capacity, and the shipment is taking place on barges because the sea is very shallow there. So the large ship is somewhere out in the sea, and the barges bring the salt to the ship. This is not very efficient, of course, and increases the cost of logistics. However, there are plans to put up a jetty, substantial jetty, that will be, of course, very long and will require big investment. However, money is cheap nowadays. We have supplied the harvesters for the Hajipir operation, and this was our contribution. Tomorrow Mr. Jala will also speak about that. Now, let's take a look at the 7 European countries and at the main salt producers in Europe. We have Germany. In 10 years, 1/3 of the salt production has diminished. In Russia, slight decrease. France, 31% of the salt production diminished in 10 years. In Netherlands, pretty steady. United Kingdom, 9% diminished. Spain is the only country in Europe that has increased salt production. And Poland, minus 15%. Altogether, 18% reduction of salt production in Europe. Why? I don't think that the legislators have the power to change the economy. However, they have the power to influence the economy. We have seen from water that there are changes taking place in Europe. One of the main changes is that the chemical industry, the caustic chlorine industry, is leaving Europe. At the same time that this 18% of salt production has taken place, the reduction has taken place, the chlorine production in Europe went down by more than 10%, by 10% in only 8 years. In 10 years, by more than 10%. This goes in line with the salt reduction, salt production reduction. And where is it moving to? It is moving to the countries that have more friendly legislation, that have the raw materials, that have government policies that support the industry, that have the will to do, such as countries in the Middle East. This is just the graph that shows the rapid deterioration of the situation in Germany and in France on less scale. So this is the Middle East, and this is where the development is taking place. We have here Gujarat, here we have the Red Sea, there's a number of projects there, we have the Gulf. And one of the main developments is taking place about 200 kilometers south of the Kuwaiti border in Saudi Arabia. This is the project of Sadara Chemicals. It's just huge. Sadara Chemicals is a joint venture between Dow Chemicals and Saudi Aramco, investing $20 billion in a facility that will produce, or that is already producing, 26 high-value chemicals out of natural gas and salt. Salt partners have supplied the salt plant for this project. This is the size, just to give you an idea. This is Jubail, and this is the existing industrial city. The size is about 12 by 10 kilometers, 120 square kilometers of chemical factories, pipes, distillation columns, furnaces. There is this jetty, and this is where the salt is coming from. It's about 40 kilometers away. This is the old industrial city, this one, and this is the new one. The new industrial city is 30% larger than the new one. And there are these two new developments there, this one and this one. This is Sadara Chemicals 1. Sadara Chemicals 2 will take place here. The preliminary work is already taking place. This is Sadara Chemicals, 2.5 kilometers by 2.5 kilometers is 6 square kilometers, and it's about 12 square kilometers together with the contractors' camps. The Sadara cracker is one of the largest crackers in the world, consisting of 12 furnaces, 7 for natural gas, 5 for naphtha, but 3 of these will also crack natural gas. There's plenty of natural gas in South Arabia coming out of the earth together with the crude oil, and they don't know what to do with it. And this is one of the uses. This is the salt mine. There is a layer of several meters of salt under the subcar in brine and is harvested by dredgers. This is the salt plant. Salt is delivered and stored in a stockpile, is purified and is sent to the saturators for dissolution. I love starting up our plants. This has taken place in temperatures of 51 degrees centigrade. In 6 weeks, I lost 8 kilos. It was great. So, these are my conclusions. Salt production is moving from Europe to the Middle East, Asia Pacific and South America, because the petrochemical industry in Europe is stagnating and declining. Land, raw materials and energy are abundant there in these new development places. Capital and technology are transferable. The money can go where it's needed. Technology can go where it is needed. It's not land bound. Government policies are industry friendly there. Europe has more chance in highly developed, sophisticated business areas than in commodities. Switzerland, I live in Switzerland. Switzerland is one of the richest countries in the world. We have no minerals except for salt. And we concentrate on things that are small, expensive, difficult to make. We can sell it for good price. They are required. We can sell it for the price. And that's, I think, would be good for the rest of the Europe and other countries in a similar situation as we are to follow. So why not turn your salt into gold? By the way, every one of you got a token. The token is 24 karat gold. You can try it. You can put a drop of hydrochloric acid or sulfuric acid on it. It will not change. And it is worth 1 troy ounce of gold. If somebody buys something from Salt Partners, we give you an invoice and you use this token to pay to us, then today's value is $1,250 US. Enjoy your present. Thank you very much.